Okay, well, let's get started. So I'll introduce myself. For those of you who don't know, my name is Zach Veers, and I'm the clinic owner here in Seattle. I've been doing Egoscue, I guess about 7 years. I've been in Seattle for 5. So before this, I was in Portland, Oregon, and I worked as a therapist there. There's a clinic there as well. So I started there after grad school and, got some more training and experience before moving up to Seattle to open up my own location. So before that, so my background is in exercise science. I got through a master's degree in exercise science, and that's kind of what got me into Egoscue. I learned about this in college, and it was because a professor of mine had used this method to overcome his back pain, and he was also had scoliosis, so he was a big fan of it because it totally changed his life and was enabled him to play golf without pain medication anymore. So when I learned about it, I thought it was intriguing and it made sense, just the theory of it. I liked how it was exercise based and was natural and something that you could do for yourself to heal your body. But of course, being in college and young and, thinking I was invincible, I didn't think it was something I would need. I was like, oh, this is something I could, because I was a personal trainer too. So I was thinking like, oh, I can use this for my clients, or it's an old person problem, right? I don't need this stuff. So, well, when I was in grad school, I started developing shoulder and back pain myself. Played a lot of racquetball as my sport. And so I thought, well, maybe I should give this a shot, see if the hype is true. So sure enough, I got my posture photos taken. So I was able to see, just like we do with all our clients, see what my posture was doing. And I found out I was like completely rotated in my torso, and my shoulders were rounded, and my feet were turned way out, and among other things. And so then it really made sense to me that the racquetball wasn't causing my pain. It was the body that I brought to the racquetball court was already out of balance, out of alignment, and so it was more susceptible to getting hurt. So anyway, to make a long story short, obviously Egoscue helped me, so it got me out of pain as well. And from there, I wanted to help other people. So I went on to become a therapist. So, and I still do my exercises every day too. So that's a question I get asked, like, is this something you do? And definitely, it's a lifestyle, a habit now. It doesn't take me very long. I spend like maybe 10 minutes in the morning every day to, keep myself moving and feeling good. And then I'll add more to that throughout the day if I need to, just depending on what I'm doing. And, it keeps me active and keeps me feeling good. So, and that's really the ultimate goal, is to not have any limitations, to be able to do everything you want to do, and not have pain restrict you. So that's kind of what we're all about here. So does anybody have any questions before we get started with the presentation here? All right, well, if you do have stuff come up throughout, just unmute yourself and interject. That's totally fine. Like I said, I want this to be interactive. So let me pull up my slides and share my screen. All right, can everybody see that? Just give me a nod, okay. All right, well, let's talk real quick about pain. That's what brings everybody here, I'm sure. So I like this analogy of pain being a warning signal, or I'm also kind of a car guy, so excuse me if I use some car analogies, but it's like your check engine light, right? It's telling you, it's a warning. It's telling you something's wrong, but it doesn't really tell you what. You have to investigate further to know what's really the case. And just like the check engine light, it doesn't necessarily mean anything is like actually broken. Your car may still seem like it's running fine, but if it's working right, it should warn you, early on, so that you can address something before it actually gets damaged or your engine blows up or something, right? So now pain is kind of the same way. It's a signal from our body to tell us something's, there's some danger. Doesn't necessarily mean your body's broken, doesn't mean there's really any damage per se, but maybe if this continues, there could be. So we got to figure out what that is. And instead of just turning off the check engine light or covering it up with duct tape so you don't see it, or for our bodies, that would be similar to ignoring the pain, taking pain medication or something that's just going to, numb you to the sensation without really fixing why the pain is there. So the cause of pain, these are just, 3 common things that people blame their pain on. And sometimes they're true. But, age, for example, it's a classic scapegoat, blaming your pain on the age, especially with hips. We'll talk about hip and arthritis a bit today. That's a pretty common reason people will blame their hip arthritis, is saying, well, I'm 60 or I'm 70 or whatever. That just kind of comes with the territory. Well, usually one hip is worse than the other, or wears out quicker than the other, and so in that case, you have to wonder, well, if it's my age that's causing this pain or this arthritis, why isn't my other hip the same way? They're both the same age, I'm assuming. So, there's got to be something else going on. And genetics, the same thing. It's like you may have a predisposition or a family history of something, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to have pain or these conditions. It's much more related to your lifestyle, your alignment, your physical activity, just the things you have control over, and the job, or physical activities in general or lack thereof. So kind of like with the racquetball, for me, like I could have blamed my pain on the racquetball because that's when I felt the pain, right? Makes sense. So every time I play, my shoulder hurts or my back hurts, or every time I sit at my computer for my work, my hip hurts or my back hurts. Well, while that may be true, it's not really the chair or the racquetball court that's causing my pain. It's, the body that you're bringing to it. So if you can have a more functional body, you can do more, right? You're more resilient. You can sit longer without hurting. Not saying sitting is great. I mean, obviously we want to spend as little time sitting as we can, but the more functional, meaning the more aligned, balanced, and mobile your body is and strong, the sitting becomes less of a problem, or the sport, whatever your sport is, becomes less of a problem. So really getting into the why then is, our belief is that it has to do with your posture. So for most people, barring, of course, major traumatic accidents or birth defects or other medical conditions, most people's chronic pain is due to muscle imbalances, postural imbalances. So just like this house, I mean, it makes sense when we just think of it in a basic sense of our bodies should be stacked up a certain way. And when they're crooked, just like this house, it looks like it's just, about to fall over. With anyone were to just touch it, it would just topple over. So it's very unstable. Things are starting to break. And it's just not safe, right? So our bodies are the same way. We need our bodies to stack up the way they were designed, to be structurally sound and be able to support the loads of modern life on them. So our poor posture, a lot of people think of posture, they hear that word and they immediately just, square up their shoulders, stand up straight, tuck their chin, whatever, but it's really more than that. It's the alignment of the whole body. So we don't always think about our feet and how that relates to posture, or our hips, or, those other joints. So good posture, I like this definition, is the state of muscular and skeletal balance, which protects the supporting structures of the body against injury or progressive deformity, whether erect, lying, squatting, or stooping. So basically, not just standing, but I mean, that's an easy way to assess it, but it's it has to translate into our movement too. Whatever position we're in, the joints and therefore the bones and muscles need to be in their proper, doing their job, you know, supporting the things they're supposed to support. So our bodies are designed to move, basically. Our bodies are very resilient. You know, we're unique in that sense that, you know, we can stand and run on feet and use our arms independently. It allows us to do all sorts of things. And so our body also needs to move to maintain proper health. I mean, we won't go into that today, but there's all sorts of things in our body that benefit from physical activity, you know, not just we're talking about physical pain here, but, you know, there's a lot of other benefits to it as well. But move it or use it or lose it is definitely a true statement. You know, our bodies, if we don't move them, then eventually we lose the ability to move. But you can see down here on the bottom, you know, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to continue to jump and run and move into, you know, your later life. It's just whenever you stop doing that over time and years of not running and jumping and playing and whatever, you know, your body just starts to lose that ability. It adapts. So we have to keep it moving if we want to keep moving. So hopefully at this point you're kind of getting the gist of it, that, you know, pain is not really such a bad thing. It's a way of our bodies communicating with us, and hopefully today you'll understand a little bit more how to interpret that, and that we don't want to just eliminate the pain through something like drugs or a surgery that may just temporarily get rid of that signal, that check engine light, but not really fix the problem. And not saying drugs and surgeries are not useful. There's definitely a time and a place for them, but for most people's chronic pain issue, they're not a good long-term solution. And there's also some negative side effects to that. So resting on the beach is always great, but eventually you have to get back to, you know, moving your body and or your jobs if you're not retired yet. You know, there's parts of life we can't avoid forever. So you have to fix the problems of that rather than just avoiding it. Or the sad baseball player there showing that, you know, giving up, like I could have just given up racquetball and then I may have felt better, but did I really want to do that? Or do you really want to give up the activities you love because of pain, or do you want to fix the pain so you can keep doing it? So let's talk about more specifics here. So what the posture looks like, or what it should look like. So there on the left, we have a little diagram of what we consider to be basically perfect posture. And I'll tell you right now, I've never seen any adults at least, that have perfect posture that look like this. So don't feel bad if you're not. I think we all have some issues. It just comes with our modern lifestyle. Little kids, I have a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old right now, and I mean, they're still fully functional. It's just amazing what their little bodies can do, and squatting and tumbling around and just super flexible and strong, and don't have any issues yet, of course. So I think we all, once again, unless there's some kind of birth defect or accident, we all have this potential. We all start off this way, and then I think it tends to go downhill once we start sitting more. You know, we go to school, we don't play as often, or we start specializing in our movement, right? We have certain sports or exercises we like that we do regularly, but we're not really getting the full, you know, using our bodies in the way that they're designed to be, which if you look at little kids, if you have kids or grandkids, you know, they never stop moving, right? Until they're asleep. And even then, sometimes they move around a lot. So, so basically we've got these 8 load-bearing joints, 2 shoulders, 2 hips, 2 knees, and ankles, and they should stack pretty much right on top of each other. So vertical alignment, if we were to draw a line, you know, on your ankle, it should go up to the center of your knee, to the front of your hip joint. The shoulders can be broader than the other joints, I will say that, that's normal, but they're still centered over the others. So you can see that middle line showing that the right and left sides are equal. Should be mirror images of each other, more or less. feet are pointed straight ahead, your knees should be pointed straight ahead. And we also have horizontal alignment too. So the shoulders and the hips especially should be level with the ground. Let's see, did I miss anything? I think that covers it. So then the side views are pretty similar. We got that vertical alignment. So ankle, knee, hip, shoulder, and then the addition of the ear from the side, we can see that helps to know the head position should stack right above the shoulders. So that's the ideal. Now, let's talk a little bit about hips specifically. So I won't bore you too much with the anatomy, but just to give you an idea of what we're talking about when we talk about the hips. So you got your pelvis, which is, so on the left here, you've got the ilium, pubic bone, and ischium. So those kind of three portions of the pelvis is kind of the big elephant ear shaped bones in your hips at the base of your spine. The sacrum in the middle, just below that, you've got your tailbone, and then the spine rests on top. So you can imagine how the pelvis is, we could liken it to the foundation for the rest of the body. So your spine rests on top of that. So if you imagine the hips were not level, so if, like that house example, if they were, let's say, tipped up on one side, that's going to affect the whole rest of the body. Your spine is therefore going to be off-centered, probably going to have to twist a little bit. It's going to change the angle at your knees too, right? Because if we lift one hip up, the legs have to adjust to that too. So you might have one knee that goes in more than the other, or maybe a foot that turns out. So the hips are really important as it relates to the whole body. The other thing to remember is when we're looking at hip pain, just because the pain is in the hips doesn't mean that the problem actually, the true cause of the pain isn't always at the hip itself. So what's happening above it, so if we go back, like let's say, we'll show some actual examples here in a minute, but your shoulders need to be resting level and your spine needs to be straight on top of those hips. If something is off in your upper body, that's going to change the load or the demand on your hips. They're going to have to work a little differently and might change position, but they're just responding to the top. So a lot of times we see actually upper body dysfunctions or problems that actually cause hip pain. So that's why some of the exercises we do, you might say, well, how is this affecting my hip? Well, it looks like I'm just using my shoulders because once again, for a lot of times, it can actually come from the top down. It can also go from the bottom up. So you may have an ankle issue or a knee problem, and that can throw things off at the hips. So they're kind of resting in the middle between your lower body and upper body. So we've got to look at the whole picture if we want to figure out what's causing the pain. So so then the hip joint, when we talk about hip, the actual hip joint is kind of that ball and socket. So you can see the femur or the thigh bone there on either side, kind of has like a round head sitting in that socket there. So that's what tends to, when we talk about arthritis or people needing a hip replacement, that's usually what they're replacing, because that joint, the hip socket, ball and socket, gets worn out, gets arthritis, which means it's inflamed. Cartilage gets damaged. The cartilage is the kind of protective connective tissue between the two bones. We'll talk about specific symptoms, but the gist of this is we got to look at the whole body and get things straightened out if we want the pelvis and hips to function properly. From the side view there, just as a note, when we're looking at posture, people talk about, you may have heard the term anterior pelvic tilt or posterior pelvic tilt, which just means, whether the pelvis is, you're looking at someone from the side, if it's tipped forward, the front is lower than the back, or if it's tipped backwards. So if that's posterior is backwards, anterior is forward. And we judge that by, you can see, hopefully you can read that on the back side, there's the posterior superior iliac spine. It's kind of the very back, farthest back point on the pelvis. And then on the front, you have the ASIS, the very frontmost portion. So those should basically be level from the side view. Maybe a little bit of an anterior tilt is healthy, but more or less we want that level, and that's what we call a neutral pelvis. So, all right. So some common hip symptoms. Have listed probably the most common ones that I see here in treating with Egoscue, but just looking over that list, maybe just raise your hand or unmute yourself and say if you see something on there that you can relate to or have been diagnosed with. Does anybody have a symptom or a condition that's not covered here? Sometimes it doesn't have a name, you know, you may just have pain and not really know what it is, right? That's okay, too. These are just some diagnoses you might have gotten from a doctor, but anything else I missed? Okay. Yeah, so we'll just briefly cover these real quick. The arthritis, like I said, degenerative hip, it's when the actual hip socket, or the ball and socket ball at the head of the femur and the acetabulum, or the whole kind of that crater in the hip meet, gets worn out. And from our perspective, that usually happens, once again, not due to age, but because there's extra stress, extra friction on that joint. And over time, your body's response to friction is to, you know, develop more tissue or inflammation to try to protect the joint from getting worn out. And so usually with a degenerative hip, it's because the pelvis has stopped moving properly. It's kind of stuck for some reason, but you still have the femur, your leg is still moving, right? You're still walking, you're still sitting and doing what else, but you're just kind of like grinding away in this immobile pelvis. So it's like if your hand was here and you just did this for, you know, hours a day for how many years, right? Like it's going to wear out. You're going to get blisters, I mean, on your hands pretty quick. So you can imagine the same thing happening in your hip socket. If you don't have proper, nice, smooth movement with both the pelvis and the hip socket moving the way they're supposed to, it just puts a lot more stress on one area of the joint, which tends to get worn out. So SI joint pain, so that's the sacroiliac joint. So if we go back here, you've got the sacrum right there in the middle, and then the two ilium or pelvis bones on the side. So the joint between those two, or three, I guess, between the sacrum and ilium is, those are your SI joints. So, and most people feel that on the back side, you know, so it's kind of like low back, just to the side of your spine, very low, almost on your butt. That's a pretty common area to feel pain. And once again, it's usually due to the pelvis being either twisted or elevated on one side, and that causes that stress on that joint because it's not level. The forces are being, you know, unevenly distributed. Sciatica, has anybody had sciatica before? I have. It's not fun. So that's nerve pain coming from the sciatic nerve, which runs from your back down through the pelvis, down your leg, all the way into your foot. So you can feel it anywhere from basically your back to your foot. So, and it's usually due to the nerve getting pinched somewhere. Pretty common if you have like a herniated disc or bulging disc in your low back, lumbar spine, pushing on that nerve. But it can also be caused by other things like the, you know, your pelvis, just the muscles in your pelvis, like the piriformis, can pinch that nerve as well. And the cause, like I said, is usually some kind of misalignment causing that extra pressure on the nerve. So we got to restore that proper spine position, proper pelvic position, and then we can usually get rid of that nerve pain. So it's a pretty common symptom we deal with. Bursitis is just, bursa is like a fluid-filled sac that kind of protects joints or bones. So on the side of your hip, like if you find the very side of your leg bone, there's kind of a hard spot there. There's lots of bursas in our body, but that's a common one to get inflamed. So bursitis, inflammation of a bursa, it's a pretty common area, just running on the side of your hip there, being painful. IT band, glute pain, kind of similar, like side of the hip, down the leg, you might feel some tightness or pain, tender to the touch. So, and these are all things, by the way, that are totally fixable by getting your body in better alignment. So these are things that we've had success with before. So, all right, on to the fun stuff. So we talked about posture. ideal posture. So now I'm going to show you some real life examples and give you a chance to practice your posture assessment skills. So who can tell me what, maybe one or two things, there's several, but let's let everybody have a chance. What do you see here that looks off compared to the diagram we showed earlier?
Right elevated hip.
Yeah, good. So everybody see that? So his right, which is for us the left, right? From the front view, you can see it even in his shorts, kind of hiked up a little higher on that right side. And so, yeah, good. What else?
Left elevated shoulder.
And left elevated shoulder, good. And those, by the way, tend to go hand in hand. So you elevate a hip, almost always the shoulders are going to respond. So it's just your body's way of compensating or adjusting to it. So it's like your body's trying to find the center again. If you're tipped off to one side, your body tries to find its way back, usually by lifting the opposite shoulder. So yeah, what else?
His feet are slightly turned out.
A little bit of turning out in the feet, yep.
And a posterior tilt, yeah?
Yeah, possibly. A little bit of tucked under his hips. If you look at the side view, it can be kind of deceiving because his hip joint is actually in front of the line, right? So he's kind of, a lot of his body is forward, right? Mm-hmm. So that could be posterior. We'd have to actually check it. Sometimes someone actually looks anterior, like his waist, his short line is kind of sloping down in the front. So you might think, oh, he actually looks anterior because his belt line is tipped forward. But since he's pushed forward like that, I'm thinking he probably is more posterior than anything, just having his hips in front of the ankles like that. So anything else?
Rounded shoulders.
Good, yeah.
He's got a narrow stance too, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
His head's pretty far forward.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's barely touching that line. And remember, it's supposed to be his ear on the line, so he's got quite a ways to go, and you can just see it in his neck, right? It just looks like not comfortable, that's for sure.
Can you pick this out on a Zoom call?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we can, well, two ways. I mean, I actually prefer to have people if I'm working with someone over Zoom, I prefer to have them take pictures like this. I give them instructions how to do it, but have a spouse or someone else, or set up a timer on your phone and take your own picture and then just email it to me. The quality's a little better, but even without that on Zoom, I just have them step back. If it's a guy, take off the shirt. If it's a girl, just tuck your shirt in and roll up your pants so we can see your knees and ankles. And yeah, I mean, you can see all this stuff over the computer pretty well, assuming, you're not in like a dark room or something, right? But yeah. All right, well, I think you guys covered it. Oh, the other thing, and this kind of relates to the elevated hip, but he's not centered, right? So from the front, that middle line, it's equal distance between his ankles, but by the time we get up, even just to his knees, you can see he's already shifting to his left. So it's definitely some right to left imbalances happening.
And it looks like his right leg, so although his feet are slightly turned down, it looks like his right leg below at least the knee is turned in somewhat. Does that?
Yeah, it's his knee, you mean his knee cap is pointing in?
Yeah. I mean, it seems like that leg is rotated in, the right leg.
Yeah, and I think some of that may be what you're seeing there is, like I mentioned, him just shifting his entire body to the left. So the knee is closer to that middle line. So yeah, I don't know if it's actually rotated inward. I mean, the kneecap looks to me like it's actually pretty pointed straight, but it is, laterally or medially shifted, like shifted to the middle. So, all right, well, there he is a couple months later. What changed?
Wow.
hardly looks like the same person, right? I mean, he's wearing a shirt now, but what's different?
I mean, it's from his hips to his legs, look 90% better from his waist down to his foot alignment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he's not shifting over to the side anymore. He's pretty darn centered, and his feet are pointed straight. Side view, big improvement too. Remember, his head wasn't really touching that line, and now it's almost perfectly on his ear. So big change in the upper body too. Yeah. The other thing, yeah, well, and then his hips, right? I mean, everything shifted back. He was so far forward. Now, you know, his hip is more centered, and therefore his whole upper body is more centered as well. So, and he did all the work. So that's the nice thing about Egoscue is it's something, you know, yes, obviously I'm here to help and provide some guidance and education and exercises, but really, you know, you're doing the exercises every day to change your body, right? And that's what it comes down to. Your body responds to the stimulus of the exercises on a consistent basis, and you get these results. So it's something you can maintain the rest of your life, right? As long as you're doing the exercises, you should expect to be able to look and feel better. So we'll show a couple other examples. Here's a younger guy. He's just a teenager, but showing how, you know, this definitely isn't just an old person problem. Unfortunately, it's becoming more and more of a young person problem now with people, you know, basically growing up with iPhones and computers and not being as physically active. You can tell this guy, I mean, he's actually in college now and doing computer science. So, I mean, his whole life he's going to be in front of a computer. And so you can see already and this was just a matter of weeks between the top photos and the bottom one in the green shirt. So he's already made a huge progress. He still has some ways to go, but luckily he's young enough that he's starting now, you know, it's going to prevent a lot of problems for him down the line. So this is just showing when we talk about the hip and not the pelvis not being mobile and how that can lead to the arthritis. This is just a good example of maybe you can relate to this if you can't touch your toes. It's usually because you're not able to move the hip and pelvis properly. You know, the femur, your leg bone is here, your pelvis is on top. For you to reach your toes, your pelvis has to be able to rotate over that thigh bone to get you down to the floor. So you can see on the left, she's really not tipping the pelvis very much. It's all happening in her upper back. You can see how rounded behind her shoulders are. You can only get so far that way. The spine can't bend that far if you don't move the hips. And there you can see her after doing some Egoscue, and now her pelvis actually was able to rotate forward to allow her spine to go down farther so that she can actually touch the floor. So when we talk about like hip-driven movement, this is what we mean. Like the pelvis and the hips have to be, you know, the leader. Otherwise, you just end up overusing your back, and we all can imagine that doesn't feel good. So, okay, here's a little more extreme example, but I like sharing this. This is from one of our clinics in Japan, and this lady was, you know, she spent most of her life working in the rice fields and bent over. So once again, our bodies adapt to what we ask them to do. So her body's kind of stuck in that posture, and it was serving her, right? It made her job easier. She had to bend over less now because her body was already halfway there. So, but you can just imagine that's not, I mean, she had, you know, a lot of back and hip pain, as you can imagine. And then on the bottom, we see how much she changed after, and this is actually after just one session. So after, you know, basically spending a lot of time on the floor. If any of you are familiar with the Egoscue tower, she did a lot of tower, and, you know, obviously made a huge change in her spine and pelvis position. So, Okay, a couple more. Here's just showing kind of the age range once again. On the left, we got a younger guy, pretty fit, active, but out of balance. You know, hips are forward, his whole body is forward. He's really upper body dominant. You know, afterwards, much better alignment vertically, ankle, knee, hip, you know, shoulder and ear are pretty well stacked up there. And on the right, this is one of my favorite clients. She's 80 now. I think I worked with her a couple years ago. She was in her upper 70s, but she was an avid hiker and photographer. So she'd go up in the mountains and take pictures and then put them on our website, which I thought was pretty cool for being 77. But you can see before, you know, posture wasn't great. Definitely kind of hunched forward in the upper back. Her pelvis is tucked under, kind of got that flat back going on, head forward. And so she would hike, but it was painful. You know, she had back pain and hip issues. And now after doing some Egoscue, you know, she went through our eight session program and even just within 8 weeks was able to see that dramatic improvement. So not only does she feel better, but I think she looks a lot younger too, right? When you change your posture for the better, it definitely looks better too. So that's an added benefit. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, so now's the chance for us to, for interaction. So we're gonna have everybody stand up and make sure you're not wearing any kind of shoes. Socks are okay, but if you have shoes on, slip them off. And then, okay, where's my camera? There we go. All right, so I just want you to stand, march in place, kind of shake out your arms and your legs, just kind of get loosened up and then hold still and just, you know, stand however you feel is natural for you. So don't try and pose or fake it here. You know, we want a true reading of what your natural posture is. So just close your eyes if that helps and just put your feet where they feel is natural for you and then breathe and relax. And now as you're standing there, we're going to focus on what you feel in the bottoms of your feet. So just get a sense for that. You know, do you feel the same thing on both feet or is it different? Meaning, do you have the same pressure on your right as your left foot? Maybe you're heavier on one side. And where on your foot do you feel the pressure? Is it more on the heels or more on the ball of the foot? Do you feel like the outer edge of your foot or the inner edge more? So get a sense for that. And then if you wouldn't mind just sharing, unmute yourself, tell me, what does everybody feel here? Where are you feeling the pressure? Because it's all going to be a little bit different probably.
I'll start. I think I feel it sort of on my big toe joint along the inside of my feet, but and on under my big toe joint.
Okay, on both feet?
Yeah, more on the left than the right.
Okay, good. So more on the ball of the foot, a little more forward and also heavier on one side. So that tells us there's probably some right to left imbalances going on. You know, remember with that symmetrical body, we should have 50-50 weight distribution. So who else?
I think heavier on one side.
Okay, so same kind of thing.
I feel it in my heels. Like most of the pressure is in my heels and more on my left than on my right.
Okay. Good. So no right or wrong answers here, just getting some feedback from your body. This is just an easy way for you to kind of self-assess. I mean, we've got the visual, we could take your pictures and look at your posture, but quickest, easiest way to check your balance is just look to what you feel on your feet. So ideally, like I mentioned, should be 50-50 right and left, and also 50-50 front to back. So the ball of your foot or kind of that pad just below your toes, and then the heel should have most of the weight. So anything that's different than that just tells us something's not quite stacked up right. So take a mental note of what you feel right now. We're gonna try a couple movements and then we'll check it again and see what changes. So Okay, so the first, we're going to do 3 things. The first exercise is going to require, well, I'll show you. I'm just going to use a chair. A small chair works, or if you have like a desk or something nearby you could use, that could work too. So basically, you want something to hang on to. So I'm going to use the wall for balance, and then you're going to put your foot up on that. I'll just use the chair, but if that's too high for you, that's fine. Just, you could use, use the seat of the chair if you need to. But basically, can you guys still hear me from back here?
Yeah.
So you put your foot up there, and this is important. You want to look down and make sure that both of your legs are still lined up with each other, meaning you don't want your knee out in front or way behind you. You want it directly below you, so it's sitting right next to your other knee. So once you get there, you're going to stand up nice and straight and tuck your pelvis under. So squeeze your glutes here to like you're trying to flatten out your low back. So when you do that, you should feel a stretch on this bent leg in the front, your quad muscles. And then, like I said, just stand up straight. Don't lean over to one side or bend forward. Keep your spine vertical. And hold for 1 minute. Okay, you guys. All right. So the glutes are just a constant squeeze. You're just going to kind of hold them tight. And yeah, it's helpful to have something in front of you that you can hold on to for balance. Okay.
How did we want our knee again?
You want your knee, so from the side it will look like this, so right next to the other knee. So,
Okay.
and then from the front, you're not touching, the knees shouldn't be touching, the legs should look parallel.
Okay.
Now, disclaimer, I should have said this at the beginning is, if anything hurts, like if you feel some tightness, some muscle strain, like that's normal, okay? But if anything is actually causing you like really discomfort, pain, sharp pain or anything, then stop, let me know. And, I don't want you guys to do anything that hurts. The thing to remember is everybody's different, right? We all felt something a little different in our feet, or everybody's posture is different. We don't even have all the same symptoms, right? So these exercises aren't necessarily going to be the best for everybody, and that's fine. It's just generic, but I tried to pick something that most people could do and that is going to help us feel a change in your posture. So let's go ahead and switch legs. So put your other foot up and do the same thing on that side. Now pay attention here. Once you get into the position, notice if it feels the same or different. Does one leg feel tighter? Maybe you get cramps on one leg but not the other. Anybody feel anything different?
Question?
Yeah.
Question. Hey, so first time you talked about tucking your hips to flatten your back. So we're rolling them to the back, the top to the back. Okay, and then you talked about the glutes. So you use your glutes. Is that like squeezing a walnut between your cheeks? Is that the idea?
Yeah, you got it. Yep. So clench the glutes up, and the glutes, one of their functions when you contract them is it'll tip the pelvis posterior. So it'll flatten out your low back as you kind of tuck under. So yeah. Thanks for clarifying. So does anybody feel anything different, comparing their right leg to their left? Anything?
Yes.
Yeah, so once again, we're starting to see like where some of these muscle imbalances are. You felt it in the weight distribution in your feet, and now you're feeling it in the difference in how the stretch feels. Hopefully as you hold this, it'll start to even out. The tight side, you may have to hold it a little longer to feel the same as the other side did, but the idea is you do this every day and eventually it'll even out those muscles that are affected by this exercise. So all right, that's good. Everybody bring your both feet to the floor. And now we're gonna do another standing one. So I want, if you can see my hands, we're gonna put your fingertips down like this. Keep your thumbs out. So I'm not a closed fist. It's actually kind of an open palm. fingertips are in. So the wrist is nice and straight, okay? So we call this golfer's grip. So make the golfer's grip, and now bring your hands at your side. So look down at your feet, make sure that your toes are pointed straight ahead. You should only have about a fist width between your big toes, so kind of narrow, and slightly turned in from what you're used to probably. So arms at your side, pull your shoulder blades back, so squeeze between the shoulders, and down, so down towards your hips. Now raise your arms out to the side, so your thumbs are pointed forward, and make little circles about the size of a small plate going forward. And this one we want to do fast, kind of the tempo I'm going. You can see how your body is moving a little bit back and forth. That's good. Okay, so keep going. Go do about 40 circles here. Looking good, everybody. Nice job, Nora, Karina. Your elbows stay straight, wrists are straight. Okay, so once you've done 40, I wasn't counting, we'll say that's 40. Shake it out. Make sure your feet are still straight. Same thing, shoulders back, arms up. This time, rotate your palms up so your thumbs are backwards, and you're gonna circle backwards. Same thing, 40 circles that way. So you might be asking, why am I doing arm exercises for my hip? Remember what we talked about, the whole body from the top to bottom being connected. So if you've got kind of an uneven shoulder position, or your upper back is just really rounded and head forward and all that, that can actually impact how your hips function and can cause hip and lower body problems. So this is gonna help change that upper body position. Okay, once you've done 40 both ways, we are going to go to a wall, or a closed door could work. Let me demonstrate this one first. So you'll just put your hands straight out in front of your chest. Fingers are spread open, and then step back so that you're kind of leaning into the wall. Arms are straight, knees are straight. And then you're just going to bend forward. So think about sticking your butt back as you bend down. Go down as far as you're comfortable. And then this is important. I want you to, so watch my low back and pelvis. So if this is kind of like neutral, I want to tip the pelvis forward so that you have a little bit of a curve in your low back. So not this, we want to tip it forward like this. And then just let your torso go down as far as you can. Keep your arms locked, your legs locked, and hold. So you should feel a stretch on the backs of your legs, maybe in your arms, shoulders, or upper back. Could feel some.
Be careful leaning on that center section.
I'm not on the center section.
Okay. Let's see. Nice job, Karina, Gina. So basically your legs should be vertical, so your hips are right over your ankle. I know that's kind of hard to see on yourself, but looks like everybody's got the idea. What is, anybody having troubles with this one?
It feels pretty good.
Good. No, it should.
Really? Wow.
I have a question. Did you have your, sometimes I see people doing this with their head down, drop through, and
Yeah.
sometimes people keep your neck straight with your arms.
Yeah, I usually leave that up to the individual, whatever
Okay.
feels best. Yeah, I don't know if there's a right or wrong there. I think just some people like to let their head hang and get a little bit of a stretch on their neck. Some people, it feels better to keep their neck more neutral. So,
Okay.
I leave
So it really does depend on the person then.
yeah.
Okay.
And Zach, how long would you hold? Did you say that you would
Just
hold
1
that?
minute. Yeah, 1 minute.
1 minute.
I mean,
May
you can
I
hold
ask
longer if you'd like.
about the previous exercise,
Sure.
the arms?
Yeah. Who am I talking to,
Yeah.
by the way? Is this
Meg.
Meg? There we go.
Yeah. You sent me a menu years ago, and that was one of the items on the menu, and I've been doing that.
The arm circles or
but
the quad stretch?
the arms, this
Mhm.
one. But I'm never quite sure about the alignment, like how high the arms should be. do they want to go like rotate right at shoulder height?
No.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, you'd want them directly out to the side of the shoulders, and you kind of circle up and down from there. Now, if your shoulders were painful, for example, if you couldn't do that without pain, then you might need to lower them down a little bit.
Yeah.
But if it feels okay, they should be out here.
Okay. And then the other thing I often feel is that when I do, particularly to the back, I feel like I'm pushing my head
forward. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's probably have a lot of tightness in your upper back shoulder blades, which when you try to go backwards like that, you have to compensate for it. So just might mean we need to work on that area a little bit more. Yeah.
And when you're talking about pain, like how much pain? Like everything hurts, right?
Yeah, well, I'll get back. That's a great question. Can we, I'll answer that in just a minute. I want to take everybody through this last thing, okay? But don't let me forget. Okay, so after those 3 exercises, let's go back to our standing position. So just kind of shake it off again. Hold still, close your eyes if you had your eyes closed before, and let's just check the feet again now. So just kind of get a sense of where your weight is distributed now, and feels something different. And what's different?
It's more equal, but it feels really different.
More equal, yeah. What were you feeling before? Remind me.
Weight on one side,
Yeah.
heavily weighted to my bad side.
And now you feel more even, like right and left?
Yes, but it feels really different.
Yeah. Well, it is different, right? I mean, if you're used to, so you say your bad side, what do you mean? Like, do you have a hip pain or knee pain over there? Or?
Yes. I have everything on my right side. All my pain is on my right side.
And you felt more pressure on your right foot?
Yes.
Interesting. So do you think that has something to do with why you have pain over there?
Could be.
I mean, makes sense to me. I mean, if you stand with more pressure on your right side, I can only assume that's putting more stress on the knee, the hip, everything on that side. So now that you feel a little more balanced, you actually are loading your left side more. How's your pain?
It's better, a little bit better.
Yeah, there you go. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
What else? Anybody else feel anything different?
My right leg feels longer. Like it feels like it's going further. It's beneath. It just feels longer. It feels like it's reaching further.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
Yeah, I have better distribution front to back too.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So pretty amazing what 3 simple movements can do to affect your whole body, right? And you feel it in your feet, even though we didn't really do anything with your feet besides stand on them. So it just shows how everything's connected. So and those were just, like I said, I tried to pick something that would cover kind of our bases, but knowing that it's probably not going to affect everybody the same. It's okay. Maybe you didn't feel as much change as someone else. That's fine. It just means that these exercises don't address your specific imbalances, but obviously they did for a lot of us. I felt more balanced too. And some people just report feeling like taller or lighter, like more upright, like less stressed. Those are good signs too. So, if you can feel that big of a change after three simple stretches and exercises, imagine what a full, like maybe a half hour of stuff that's specific to your body would feel like. So, and that's really what we do at Egoscue is we use the exercises based on your posture. So everybody's posture is a little different. Everybody's exercise routine is going to be a little bit different. So it's one thing I don't want you to think that this is like a cookie cutter approach that everybody, this is the magic exercise for hip pain. Like, hopefully you're understanding now that that's not really how it works. We have to address the posture and we have to change the muscles that are imbalanced in your body. And when we do, as some of you already felt, like you're more balanced, pain is better. So that's great. Now, if you do that every day, it's only going to get better from here. So, so let me just one more slide here, and then we'll wrap up. Share my screen. Okay, so the next steps for you. What are you going to do after today? Well, you may still be skeptical, you know, that's fine. I was skeptical at first too. Remember, I thought, oh, it makes sense, but it doesn't apply to me, right? I couldn't, it's not right. Well, I think the best source for you to answer your questions and kind of really figure out, you know, if this makes sense or not is to read Pain Free. So that's a book written by Pete Egoscue, the founder of the Egoscue Method, whose name it comes from. He wrote several books, but Pain Free is probably the best one to start with. It's a really easy read. You can get it on Amazon for 15 bucks. And I think what better way to get your questions answered than from the mouth of the founder himself. So I would definitely recommend that. And even if you're, I mean, I recommend all my clients read the book too. So regardless of where you're at, I think you would benefit from that book. So, well, you maybe some of you are feeling like, okay, this makes sense. Like, yeah, I felt some changes and, but still have some questions like, you know, I've got this shoulder issue too, or, you know, does this really apply to my condition? I've got something unique or whatever, you know, maybe you just need some one-on-one guidance or you want to talk personally with me. So happy to do that by giving you all the chance to have a free posture evaluation. So we can do that virtually on Zoom. Like I said, you can either send me your posture photos or I can just look at you through Zoom. And that way I can help you understand, you know, what exactly is going on with your body and how that relates to your pain. So that's something I'm offering as a thank you, just to help you learn more. No commitment required. So free and over Zoom, and that's typically like a 20 or 30 minute thing. Now, in this third category, you may feel like if this is something that really makes sense to you, you felt a change today, you know, you feel like Egoscue is the right thing for you to do, and you're ready to, you know, start your transformation and have those same results that the people in the pictures did, then the best bet is to, you know, schedule your first appointment and go through our program, which is, you know, the best way to make those changes is consistently doing your exercises is the most important thing. But then just as important, or maybe second most important, is getting the one-on-one care to make sure that you're progressing. So what we do in the sessions is first assess your posture so we know what the problem is, and then give you the correct exercises to address that problem. So in follow-up, we're making sure that you're doing things correctly, that you, as your body changes, you know, you're going to get a little more balanced, a little straightened out. Your symptoms are going to change, or maybe move around, get better, get worse, whatever. Something's going to change. So then we have to change the exercises too. So it's a process. You know, you didn't get into this position overnight, most likely. So it's going to take a little bit to get your body back to where it should be. But yeah, and so you can do that. And if you do sign up in the next week, then you can get a 15% discount on any of our therapy packages too. So as a thank you for coming and participating today, giving me your time. So I'll just put the prices here. This is our basic two options. We offer 16 or 8 sessions. The 16 sessions can also be shared with multiple people. So if you had a family member or a friend or someone on this call you wanted to get in on a package together, it's cheaper. If you do the math, it's cheaper per session with the 16. And that's what most of our clients end up doing is 16 sessions. That gives us enough time to not only get you out of pain most of the time, but a step beyond that is to keep you out of pain, right? Getting into a strength routine or starting to, you know, when you don't have pain, then you realize like all these things that you've wanted to do that you couldn't do because of your pain, like starting to exercise again, or going back to yoga or hiking or running a marathon, whatever it is. So then we got to work on conditioning a little bit, and then making sure that you are on a good maintenance routine for the rest of your life that you can do on your own. So those are the prices with the discount taken out. And it's the same if you come in person to the clinic, which we are still open unless until the governor says otherwise. We are still considered essential, so we can see people in person. We just wear masks and, only one person at a time and all that good stuff. So, or you can do it over Zoom, like I said, and it's the same process, the same amount of time spent with you, the same results. It's just as effective. So it's the same price. All right. Anybody have any questions?
Is it okay if I give a recommendation?
Is that Kathy, I heard?
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I just wanted to tell everyone a couple of years ago, I fell over a suitcase and I had a hip problem and I couldn't walk. And I went to a lot of doctors who, I couldn't sit down. They told me I needed hip replacement, but I was young, and I went to a number of doctors, and then my father told me about the Egoscue Method. So I came to Zach, I think it was June of 2019, and some flowers, some bulbs, and I can go hiking. I've gotten my life back, and I do exercise every day for about 40 minutes, and it's just great to be able to take care of the pain. And even when you get the pain during the day, you can release the pain with these exercises. So I would just encourage you, if you're having pain, to try this. It's worth the investment in yourself and to get rid of the pain.
Oh, thank you, Kathy. Yeah, well, it's been a pleasure working with you, and that's one of the reasons I do what I do. Is I love being able to see other people get out of pain and get their life back, and and also much less. What has it done for you emotionally, Kathy? Like, you were probably had a lot of fear and anxiety in the past, right?
That's so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're down because, your whole family is suffering because you can't do what you used to do. I couldn't even sit at the dinner table. I had to stand eating, and the doctors didn't understand why I had this pain. I don't know what it was, but after a few months of doing these exercises, it went away. And I've just been, and how my posture was. Just getting stronger and stronger, and it's like a miracle.
Yeah,
it really is.
You're kind of breaking up there, but I think we got the gist of it.
So thank you, Zach.
Thank you. Thanks for coming to the workshop.
Have you ever worked with anyone with cerebral palsy?
Sure.
Yeah, well, I worked with a younger girl. I think she's like 6 years old. I worked with her, and I think when I first started, now that it's been a while, but I think when I was in Portland, I worked with an adult who had that, and I think he could kind of get around with crutches, but he spent a lot of time in a wheelchair too. So I've had a little bit of experience with that. Yeah.
Okay. And it was helpful, like it actually helped them.
Yeah. I'm not going to claim that it's going to take away, their
right
or anything, but I think with that condition, like anything that you can do to help them move better is good, in both cases, both with the young girl and with the adult, both of them were able to be a little more stable on their feet, and just generally had better, balance and coordination. I know everybody's affected differently, so just speaking in general terms here, but I think, I definitely think that's something that could help someone with that condition. So,
okay.
yeah. do you mind me asking, what is it, a child or a friend or a
Yeah.
family member?
My son. Yeah.
How old is he?
He's 24.
Okay.
So,
Is he able to get around, like self-ambulate at all, or?
yeah. Yeah, he
Good.
can. He tires easily, so he can walk without anything. And then he needs a walker some of the time, or if we're out, he's slow. So if we're out and about, then he's in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Well, that's good. I mean, if he can, if he can move on his own, for even sometimes, like that definitely puts him at an advantage. And I think it could definitely, it could only help. It definitely wouldn't hurt. So, yeah, just let me know if you want to talk about it more.
okay.
Any other-
And you were going to talk about pain, like how much pain is okay. And
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Thanks for bringing that up. Got sidetracked. Thanks for getting me back on track. So with the exercises, I usually tell people, like, you have to distinguish between like good pain and bad pain. So good pain, I would say, is like, tightness or a, cramping, like muscle fatigue. Like if you like feel like you're doing a movement that you use in muscles you haven't used in a long time, like that's uncomfortable, but it's not really like a bad thing, right? So that's like good pain, which is okay, and you want to work through. Now the bad pain stuff that we want to avoid would be more like, sharp shooting pain, stuff that makes you like wince or, like have kind of an adverse effect too. Nerve pain, that sort of thing. Something that's, there's obviously something wrong and you don't want to do that. So sometimes it's hard to differentiate, and so everybody experiences pain differently. So it's hard to make a general rule, but that's generally how I describe it. And so if were experiencing that bad pain during any of those exercises, then first we'd want to make sure you're doing them correctly. And if you were, and it still hurt, then we would just know that, okay, your body's maybe not ready for that yet. But let's find an alternative or fix whatever is going on so that you can do that exercise, because you should be able to do those. Those are pretty basic movements and postures, right? So if something hurts, then we've got to figure out why and fix that, rather than just, avoiding anything that hurts, right? So does that help answer the question? Yeah, okay. What was something hurting during those stretches, or?
Yeah. Yep.
Which one?
The shoulder thing. I was in a car accident, and then I just never have a chance to, because I'm taking care of my son, right? I can't really ever get to a point where my body just rests and tries to heal. So shoulders, and then my thighs and lower back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so that's fine. I mean, like I said, the exercises were not picked necessarily. It's just for you. So it doesn't mean that there's not better exercises that would feel good. And maybe some of that discomfort you would have to work through. But, that's why we take a one-on-one approach and really make sure that we're, finding the best fit for you. So yeah, don't want anybody to feel discouraged, like, oh, these exercises didn't feel good, or I didn't, like, there's still hope. There's hundreds of other exercises we could choose for you. Okay. So, all right. Any other questions? All right. Well, feel free to email or call me. You should all have the email address. Whatever you got the invitation for this, you can just reply to that email, seattle@egoscue.com, or call me. And like I said, if you do want to do something together, then just if you want to take advantage of that discount, just let me know in the next week before Thanksgiving, and we can give you a 15% off. So, or if you just want to do the free consult, let me know too before the schedule fills up. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody for joining, and I look forward to hopefully talking with you guys again soon.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. It was very helpful. Thank you.
Take care. Have a good rest of your day.
Okay.